There's a particular kind of silence that falls over a dinner table just before everything changes, the clink of cutlery, the faint hum of a distant car outside, the smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. I remember that silence well, because it was the last moment I still believed my marriage was what I thought it was. Laura had made roasted salmon, her specialty. Dill, lemon, perfectly flaky. She even opened a bottle of Pinot Gris we'd been saving, which, in hindsight, was probably her way of cushioning the blow. She was radiant that night, almost glowing. Not in the I love you kind of way, more like someone who had made peace with a decision. Her hair was curled, just the way I liked it, and she wore the deep green blouse that usually meant she wanted sex later. I remember looking at her and thinking, damn, I got lucky. Then she looked up at me, chewed on her bottom lip like she always did when she was nervous, and set her wine glass down with a softness that made my stomach twist. I've been thinking, she said, her voice almost casual. That's how it started. Just those 3 words. I had no idea they were the prelude to the most pivotal moment in our lives. Yeah, I asked, cutting another piece of salmon, trying to ignore the subtle tension rising in her tone. Laura looked directly at me. What do you think about an open marriage? For a moment, I didn't hear anything after that. I blinked, fork halfway to my mouth. My brain was still buffering. Wait, what? I chuckled, assuming I'd misheard her. Or maybe she was joking. We'd never really been the kinky fantasy-type couple. She smiled, a little too rehearsed. An open marriage. Just opening things up. You know, to keep things exciting. I sat back in my chair, fork abandoned, suddenly not hungry anymore. Are you serious? She nodded, sipping her wine again, the corners of her lips tight. I've been doing some reading. Listening to podcasts. A lot of couples do it. It's not as taboo as people think. Couples. Podcasts. I felt my stomach sink. This wasn't spontaneous. This had been brewing in her mind for a while. So, what? We sleep with other people now? That's what you want. It's not just about sex, she said quickly. It's about exploration, growth, reinvention. We've been together for 8 years, Jake. Maybe it's time to evolve. There it was. The word that made everything sound so polished, so forward-thinking, evolve. As if we were just shedding skins, and this was the next natural phase in our relationship. But all I could hear was, you're not enough for me anymore. I tried to keep my voice level, tried not to let the hurt bleed out. Are you already seeing someone? Laura's eyes widened, genuinely surprised. No. God, no. This isn't about anyone specific. It's just something I've been thinking about. Something I want to try. And I thought, maybe, if we did this together. I stared at her, searching for the woman I married. The one who used to laugh so hard she'd snort. The one who'd fall asleep on my chest after long hikes. The one who once said I was her whole world. Now she wanted to share me. No, that's not right. She wanted permission to drift, with a safety net. I nodded slowly, more out of shock than agreement. Okay. She blinked. Okay. I mean, if that's what you want, I said, voice hollow. I felt like I was watching myself from outside my own body. Laura reached across the table, touching my hand. Her fingers were warm, soft, familiar. It doesn't have to be a big thing. We talk about everything. Set boundaries. Maybe we just start by meeting people. Coffee dates. No expectations. I stared at her hand on mine, and for a brief moment, I wanted to pull her close, ask her if something was broken between us, if I had failed her somehow. But the words caught in my throat. Instead, I smiled, a tight, brittle smile, and nodded again. Sure. Coffee dates. She beamed then, relief washing over her face. She poured us more wine, started talking about communication strategies and online communities, about safe words and check-ins and shared calendars. She was buzzing, alive in a way I hadn't seen in months. And I sat there, swirling my wine, wondering when she stopped looking at me the way she used to. That night in bed, she curled against me like always, head on my shoulder, breathing steady. My arm rested around her automatically, but I stared at the ceiling for hours. Her warmth was there, but she felt 1,000 miles away. An open marriage. 2 words that felt like the beginning of the end. I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her in someone else's arms. Heard someone else making her laugh. Imagined her legs tangled with someone taller, broader, more exciting. And me? I was already the ghost in my own relationship. The next morning, she kissed me before leaving for work, cheerful, like the night before had just been some new TV show she wanted us to try together. I stood in the doorway watching her drive off, and I swear, it felt like she took something with her that I'd never get back. Not yet angry, not yet heartbroken, just numb. And beneath the numbness, something colder was beginning to stir. It's strange how quickly a routine can fall apart. How something as simple as eating dinner together or brushing your teeth in sync becomes a memory instead of a habit. 2 weeks had passed since Laura's proposal. 2 weeks since I agreed to open our marriage. And in that time, everything unraveled. She stopped coming home at the usual time. That was the first shift. We used to sit on the couch after work, mindless TV, a shared blanket, her feet tucked under my leg. Now, I'd hear her key in the lock around 10, sometimes later. Her heels clicking across the hardwood, her voice too casual as she'd say, "Hey, babe," like she'd just run to the store and not disappeared for 5 hours. "Sorry, we lost track of time," she'd add, tossing her purse onto the table. "Just drinks." But she'd still be wearing the lipstick she only used on date nights. Her perfume, musky, floral, intoxicating, would cling to her like static. And once, as she leaned in to kiss my cheek, I caught the faintest scent of someone else's cologne. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I stopped asking where she was going. Not because I didn't care, because the answers felt like punches wrapped in politeness. "Just meeting someone from the app," she'd say, spritzing perfume onto her neck. Nothing serious. Then she'd smile, reassuringly, like she was doing something noble, like fucking strangers was part of a self-care plan. Dinner became solitary. I'd make enough for two and plate both meals anyway, as if pretending she was just late again would somehow bring her back. The second plate always went untouched, the food drying out under the kitchen light, while I scrolled endlessly through old photos on my phone. Happier times I couldn't delete, even when they hurt. There was one photo I kept going back to. A camping trip, 2 summers ago. She had no makeup on, messy hair, and this huge, goofy smile. She was in my hoodie, holding a stick with a burned marshmallow on the end. I remember that night. She crawled into my lap beside the fire, whispered she loved me like it was the most obvious thing in the world. And now she was out meeting new people. I didn't recognize her anymore. But worse, I didn't recognize myself. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just hollow. A man playing pretend in his own home. Then one night, everything shifted. It was a Thursday, cold, gray, and uneventful. I'd just poured myself a whiskey when I got the notification. "Emily W. Sent you a friend request." The name hit me like a sucker punch. Emily. Emily Wallace. My high school sweetheart. I sat there staring at the screen, heart pounding for no logical reason. It had been, 15 years? She was the girl I almost took to prom, the one I kissed under the bleachers sophomore year, the one I said I'd marry someday. But life did what it always does. We went to different colleges, drifted apart, promised to stay in touch, and never did. And now, she was on my screen. The same warm brown eyes in her profile photo. Still had that slightly crooked smile I once swore made her look like trouble, the good kind. I hesitated. Was this the universe tossing me a lifeline? Or a coincidence? I clicked accept. Seconds later, a message popped up. "Emily, wow. I didn't think you'd remember me." I stared at the words, the cursor blinking like a held breath. "Me? How could I forget you?" A beat. Then another message. "Emily, still smooth, huh?" I grinned. First genuine smile I'd cracked in days. We kept it simple that night. Just back and forth nostalgia. She'd married once, ended badly. No kids. Still lived in the city. Still listened to Death Cab, and claimed it wasn't a phase. I told her I was married, left out the details. When I mentioned Laura's name, there was a pause in the thread. Then, "Emily. I remember her. From college parties, right? She always had great boots." Funny, the things people remember. We chatted until midnight. For the first time in weeks, I fell asleep without hearing the front door creak open. Laura came home sometime around 2 a.m. I pretended to be asleep. She slipped into bed smelling like bourbon and expensive soap. Her cold feet brushed my leg. I didn't move. The next day, her toothbrush was missing. I found it tucked into her purse, wrapped in a sandwich bag. That hit me harder than I expected. She was sleeping over, and I was clinging to a conversation with a girl from high school like it was a damn life preserver. Still, something had stirred inside me. A warmth. A reminder of who I used to be. The boy who sang off-key in a car with the windows down. who once stayed up all night writing bad poetry just to make Emily laugh. That boy wasn't dead, just buried under years of routine and quiet disappointments. Emily messaged again that afternoon. Emily, I hope this isn't weird, but I'm really glad you responded. So was I? The silence in our house kept getting louder. Laura and I talked less. She stopped texting when she was out. Didn't bother with excuses anymore. And yet, every time I heard the notification chime on my phone, my chest lit up like it hadn't in years. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was survival. And maybe, just maybe, it was the start of something I didn't even know I needed. It's a strange kind of comfort, talking to someone who once knew you before life got complicated, before taxes, mortgage payments, and your wife suggesting an open marriage over roasted salmon. Emily and I started messaging every night. At first, I was cautious, polite, guarded. After all, I was still married, even if Laura was out somewhere learning someone else's cologne preferences. But Emily didn't push. She asked about my job, about old friends, about whether I still played guitar. I didn't. And whether I still put ketchup on scrambled eggs. I did. Each chat cracked something open. A little smile here, a little memory there. And before long, I found myself laughing again. Really laughing. The kind that starts deep in your chest and surprises you with its sincerity. One night, we got on the topic of high school regrets. She told me she wished she'd run off after graduation, maybe joined that art program in Seattle instead of staying close to help her mom. I told her I regretted not asking her to prom. She paused. Then came her message. Emily, you did. I said yes. Then your dad lost his job, and you didn't go. I stared at that text longer than I should have. She remembered. It all came flooding back. The nerves, the cheap corsage I'd hidden in my car, the way I practiced asking her in the mirror. Then Dad got laid off, and prom became a luxury we couldn't afford. I never brought it up again, too ashamed to admit the reason. Me? I didn't think you remembered that. Emily, Jake. I waited in my room in that damn blue dress for an hour before I finally realized you weren't coming. God. My stomach twisted. Me, I'm sorry. I should have explained. Emily, you were 17. You didn't owe me anything. Me, I owed you the truth. Another pause. Emily, well, you've still got time to make it up to me. I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't need to. The next day, Laura texted at 11:23 p.m. Laura, don't wait up. That was it. No love you. No explanation. Just an assumption that her absence had become normal. I didn't reply. Instead, I found myself staring at my phone screen, watching the little green dot next to Emily's name flicker on and off like a heartbeat. She messaged a minute later. Emily, still awake? Me. Can't sleep. Emily. Me neither. Coffee tomorrow? There it was. 2 words that hit harder than a slap. Coffee tomorrow? Like the beginning of a sentence I wasn't sure I should finish. I stared at them, my thumb hovering over the screen. My heart pounded like it hadn't in months. Laura had been meeting new people for weeks now. She came home smiling. Giddy even. Like a teenager sneaking through the back door. And here I was, sitting in our kitchen, her lipstick-stained wine glass still by the sink, considering meeting someone who actually seemed to see me. Someone who used to. Me, yeah? Coffee sounds good. We settled on a little place downtown. Not the chain coffee shop near my office. This one was quieter, tucked between a used bookstore and a vintage record store. The kind of place where time felt slower. I didn't tell Laura I was going. I didn't even check if she came home that night. The morning air had that cool November bite, the kind that stings just enough to wake you up. I got there early, which surprised me. I usually ran 5 minutes late to everything. But I was already seated with my second cup when she walked in. Emily. She wore a denim jacket over a navy sweater, her auburn hair pulled into a low bun. No makeup, just lip balm and a little eyeliner. And yet, she looked radiant. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on me. That smile, crooked and soft, pulled at something buried deep in my chest. Jake, she said, like she still couldn't believe it was me. I stood up too fast, nearly knocking my cup over. She laughed, and suddenly I was 17 again. God, you haven't changed, she said, sitting across from me. You have. I replied before I could stop myself. In a good way. We talked for over 2 hours. About everything. About nothing. We shared stories that spilled out effortlessly. Awkward college roommates, failed job interviews, the death of her mom, the miscarriage she never told anyone about. I found myself confessing things I hadn't said aloud in years. I told her about Laura, but only the outline. I didn't want to ruin this with bitterness. She listened, really listened, and when she reached out and touched my hand across the table, I felt a bolt of warmth shoot up my arm and lodge itself somewhere behind my ribs. There was a moment, brief, electric, where our eyes met, and I swear the air shifted between us. It wasn't sex. Not yet. But it was intimacy. The kind that sneaks in through the cracks when you're not looking. I walked her to her car. She paused, fingers grazing the door handle, then turned to me. "I don't want to mess up your life," she said. "You're not," I whispered. "You're reminding me I still have one." She smiled again. "Text me when you get home." "I will." And I did. But I didn't go straight home. I drove around for an hour, windows down, music blaring. My heart ached in the best way. I knew things were changing. I just didn't know how fast. It started as just catching up. But let's be honest. Coffee was never just coffee when you're sipping it with the girl who still lingers in your dreams. Emily texted me that night. "Thanks for today. I didn't realize how much I missed you." I stared at that message for 5 minutes before replying. "I missed you too. More than I probably should have." She didn't respond right away. I figured I pushed it, crossed an invisible line. But 2 hours later, just after midnight, a simple reply arrived. There's no rule saying you can't miss what felt real. That was the thing about Emily. She didn't speak in games. There were no half-truths, no emotional puzzles to solve. Just honesty, quiet and deliberate, like she knew I was standing on the edge and needed someone to hold the railing. The next day, Laura stayed out again. I didn't even ask where. Her heels echoed down the hall when she came in after 1 a.m. I watched her from the dark as she undressed by the glow of her phone, humming to herself, the tune unfamiliar. Probably something he had played for her. She didn't see me awake. She didn't even look. I turned my head and stared at the ceiling, a hollow ache blooming beneath my sternum. By the weekend, Emily and I had spoken every day. Our chats bled into phone calls. Her laugh became familiar again, warm, lilting, with a little snort at the end that always cracked me up. She asked about my guitar, and when I admitted I hadn't touched it in years, she dared me to pick it up again. "Play something. Right now," she said over the phone, teasing. I hesitated. But after 10 seconds of awkward silence, I grabbed the dusty acoustic from the closet, tuned the strings by ear, and played the intro to Wish You Were Here. She went quiet. "You remember," she whispered. How could I forget? That night, I didn't wait for Laura to come home. I turned off the light, pulled the blanket high, and tried not to think about what her skin might still smell like when she crawled into bed. The next morning, I found a note on the fridge. "Meeting someone for brunch. Might be late. Don't wait for me." No heart. No name. Just a scribble on a yellow sticky note, like I was her roommate, not her husband. I stood there in my boxers, staring at that note with my coffee going cold in my hand. I didn't feel jealousy anymore. Just absence. Later that afternoon, I texted Emily. "Me? You free today?" She replied in under a minute. "Emily, absolutely. Cafe Lark? For PM?" We met again. Same booth in the back, same low hum of espresso machines and quiet jazz. She wore a soft, cream sweater and jeans, her hair down this time, framing her face. The moment I saw her, my shoulders dropped. I hadn't realized how tense I'd been all day. She smiled when I Saturday, "You look tired." "I am. Still not sleeping?" I shook my head. "You want to talk about her?" I thought about it, then shook my head again. "Not really." Emily nodded like she understood. We talked about books instead. She was halfway through The Night Circus, which I'd never read. I asked if it was good. She said it reminded her of being young and hopeful. Then she blushed and added, "It also has a lot of unresolved sexual tension." We both laughed, but the silence that followed was charged, not uncomfortable, just heavier than before. There was a moment when our hands touched on the table. Accidental, but neither of us moved right away. Her fingers were cold. Mine were shaking, just a little. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "I think so. More okay when I'm with you." She didn't say anything, just held my gaze. Time passed faster than I wanted it to. By the time we realized, it was nearly 7 p.m. The streetlights outside had flickered on, casting golden glows through the cafe windows. The place was nearly empty. "I should probably head home," I said, glancing at the clock. Emily looked down. "Right. You've got a wife waiting." I almost laughed. She's probably not even there. Emily didn't respond. She just looked at me like she wanted to say something, but wasn't sure she had permission. We walked out together. The autumn air was crisp, the sidewalks damp from a brief drizzle earlier. We stood beside her car, neither of us ready to say goodbye. I like this, she said. Us. It felt real. I offered. She nodded. Yeah, real. I took a step closer. Her breath caught, just slightly. I noticed. I'm not sure what this is, I said softly, but I know it doesn't feel wrong. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. I reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Then, slowly, gently, I leaned in. The kiss wasn't hungry. It wasn't frantic or lustful. It was quiet, careful. Two people rediscovering each other in the spaces where pain used to live. And when we pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine. I shouldn't, she whispered. Me either. But neither of us moved. Eventually, she got in the car, started the engine, and left. I stood on the curb watching her tail lights disappear around the corner. I didn't go home right away. I drove aimlessly for an hour, my phone silent the entire time. No message from Laura. No missed call. No curiosity. When I finally walked into the house, the lights were off. Her shoes were gone. Her toothbrush still wasn't in the bathroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty side where she used to sleep. And all I could think about was how warm Emily's lips had been. Laura strutted in the next morning like she hadn't just stayed out all night. She tossed her keys onto the counter, humming some pop song I didn't recognize. Her hair was still curled, makeup just slightly smudged, enough to tell me she hadn't come home just to sleep. She smelled like unfamiliar cologne, woodsy and sharp, wrapped around her like a second skin. The air followed her like a ghost. Morning, she said, pulling open the fridge, like we were two roommates sharing a kitchen and not a fractured marriage. Did you sleep at Derek's? I asked without looking up from the sink. She paused just long enough to tell me that yes, I'd guessed right. Not that it's your business anymore, she said with a shrug. We agreed, remember? Openness. I turned and faced her. There's a difference between being open and being absent. Laura smirked, biting into an apple. Maybe you should try getting out more. You're allowed to, you know. The rules apply to both of us. The truth was, I had been getting out more. Just not the way she meant. Emily and I had started texting every morning. It was small stuff, inside jokes, bad puns, random memories. But there was warmth in it. Familiarity. Like I was reconnecting with a part of myself that had been buried under years of doing the right thing. She asked me once what I used to dream about when I was a kid. Being a writer, I'd said, surprised I even remembered. Then write, she replied, like it was the simplest thing in the world. Laura hadn't asked about my dreams in years. We talked about her career, her yoga retreats, her wellness podcasts. When I spoke, she listened with half her face in her phone. But Emily? She remembered things I'd forgotten I ever said out loud. One night, while Laura was out again, I sat on the patio with my guitar and tried playing the melody I used to hum in college, the one I never finished writing. I recorded 30 seconds of it and sent it to Emily. She responded with, I can hear it already. Sounds like the start of something beautiful. I don't think she meant the music. Meanwhile, Laura kept flaunting her freedom like a new coat. She'd walk through the house in tight jeans and deep-cut tops she hadn't worn in years, catching her reflection in the hall mirror like she needed confirmation she still had it. Going out with someone new tonight, she'd mention casually, like I should be proud of her. He's an architect, speaks French. That's great, I said, not looking up from my phone. She narrowed her eyes. You haven't even asked who I've been seeing. I don't need to know, I replied. Laura tilted her head. You're acting different lately. I am different. She blinked, thrown off by how calm I sounded. And she was right. Something had changed. I'd started going to the gym again. Nothing crazy. Just enough to feel like I existed in my own body again. I swapped the ratty jeans and hoodies for fitted shirts, cleaner lines. Got a new haircut, shaved the beard. Even started wearing the cologne I hadn't touched in over a year, the one Laura used to love. She noticed. She didn't say anything outright, but I saw her watching me one morning, lingering by the bedroom door, eyes flicking up and down like she was trying to solve a puzzle she hadn't realized she'd started. You seeing someone? She asked finally, voice too light to be casual. I didn't answer right away, just sipped my coffee and smiled. You wouldn't tell me even if you were, she added, like it stung her more than she expected. I met her eyes. You wanted this, remember? Laura didn't respond. She left 10 minutes later, heels clicking faster than usual. Emily and I, on the other hand, kept things slow. Sweet. We hadn't kissed again since that moment by her car. But the tension was there, simmering beneath every word, every glance. We started having nightly phone calls. Long ones. She'd pour a glass of wine. I'd crack open a beer. We'd talk until our voices went soft, like we were whispering secrets into each other's ears, even from miles apart. Tell me something you've never told anyone, she said once. I paused. Sometimes I wonder if I settled. Emily didn't gasp or scold or moralize. She just said, you probably did. That honesty hit harder than I expected. I asked her the same thing. I used to imagine running into you in the grocery store, she said. Like, years after high school. Just randomly. And you'd see me and say, God, I messed up letting you go. I would've, I said, voice low. I did. Silence stretched between us. Not awkward, just full. Then she whispered, you still could. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, the ceiling fan spinning slow above me, Laura snoring softly beside me. Back turned, a mile away. Her phone lit up once. A name I didn't recognize. I didn't bother checking. I didn't need to. The next day, Emily sent me a photo. It was nothing overt. Just her reading on her balcony, legs curled beneath her, sunlight across her face. But something in her eyes, the quiet openness, the ease, stirred something in me I hadn't felt in a long time. Desire. Not just the physical kind. Not the cheap, transactional kind I imagined Laura diving into. But something deeper. Hungrier. The desire to be seen. To be wanted for who I was, not what I represented on paper. Husband, provider, safe bet. Emily saw past all that. She always had. And now, I was starting to see myself through her eyes again. I didn't know what came next, but I knew the tide had turned. Laura still thought this was a game. A phase. That eventually, I'd beg to close the marriage again and play the grateful husband. But she didn't realize something critical. I was no longer afraid to lose her. Because I had already started finding someone. Someone who reminded me of who I was before all the silence. It rained the night, everything changed. Not a soft drizzle, no. The kind of storm that makes windows shudder, thunder rolling in deep, patient growls like the sky is warning you something's about to break. Fitting, really. Because something in me had been building, too. Pressure. Need. Silence stretching tight across every surface of my life until it was thin as paper. Emily texted me around 8 p.m. Storm's crazy. Hope you're dry and warm. I stared at the message for a moment, thumb hovering. Then I tapped back. I'm not. I've been pacing the house all night. Feels like the walls are closing in. She responded fast. Come over. Just to talk. I'll make coffee. I didn't ask if she was sure. I didn't think. I just grabbed my keys and drove through the rain, my wipers swiping frantically at the downpour, the roads shimmering under the streetlights like liquid mirrors. My heart was pounding before I even pulled into her apartment complex. When she opened the door, Emily was barefoot, wearing a long gray tee and leggings. Her hair was damp, messy in the kind of way that made her look like she'd just stepped out of bed. Hey, she said, voice soft but steady. Hey, I replied, trying to keep mine from shaking. She stepped aside. I walked in. The place smelled like cinnamon and vanilla, soft and warm, the kind of scent that lives in memories more than rooms. A single lamp cast a soft amber glow across the living room. Coffee's fresh, she said, disappearing into the kitchen. I sat down on her couch, still dripping a little, and ran a hand through my hair. She returned with 2 mugs and sat beside me. Not close, but not far either. I wasn't sure if you'd actually come, she said. I glanced at her. I wasn't either. We sipped in silence for a bit, the thunder filling the space between our words. Then Emily turned toward me, legs tucked under her, eyes studying me like she was tracing the shape of something fragile. You look exhausted, she said. Not just physically. I exhaled. It's like I'm living next to a stranger. She comes home, talks about her dates like they're business meetings, laughs like nothing's changed. But it has. Everything has. And I can't pretend it's fine anymore. Emily set her cup down, her fingers brushing mine for a moment. You don't have to pretend with me, she whispered. That did it. Something inside me cracked open. I turned, and before either of us could second guess it, we kissed. It wasn't tentative. It wasn't soft. It was inevitable. My hand found her jaw. Hers slipped beneath my shirt, fingers grazing skin that hadn't been touched like this in months, maybe longer. The storm outside raged, wind howling like it wanted to join us. But in that moment, it all faded. The rain, the noise, even the guilt. All that existed was her. Emily. The girl who once danced barefoot in my dorm room to the Pixies. The one who used to write her phone number on my palm in ink that bled by morning. We didn't rush it. There was no frenzy, no desperation, just a quiet hunger, explored and deepened slowly. She pulled back first, breath trembling against my lips. "Are you sure?" she asked, forehead pressed to mine. "No," I admitted, "but I've never wanted anything more." We didn't make love on that couch. Not yet. But we curled into each other like two people who'd been surviving in separate deserts and finally found water. Her fingers laced with mine, her head resting against my chest as I traced slow circles on her back. "I'm not trying to replace anyone," she said after a long silence. "I know, and I don't want to be a secret forever. You won't be." She looked up at me, eyes searching. "Jake, you need to ask yourself something. Are you staying with Laura because you still love her, or because you're afraid of what leaving looks like?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. But her question haunted me the entire drive home. When I got back, the house was dark. Laura hadn't come home yet. Again, I stood in the doorway, soaked from rain and sweat and memory, and realized something that hit me like a punch to the chest. I didn't feel guilty. Not the way I thought I would. Because what happened with Emily wasn't revenge. It wasn't a checkmark in some childish tit-for-tat. It was awakening. It was the quiet, powerful feeling of being chosen, not out of obligation, but desire. I climbed into bed, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling. I could still smell Emily on my shirt, and I didn't want to wash it off. Laura stumbled in around 2 a.m., laughing at something on her phone. She paused when she saw me awake, but didn't speak. She didn't ask where I'd been. She never did. She climbed into bed, her back turned, and within minutes she was asleep, or pretending to be. I stared at her silhouette, the rise and fall of her breathing, and I finally understood the truth. This wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a contract that expired the day she chose excitement over connection. And while she was off chasing novelty, I had rediscovered something real. There are moments when you realize you're living two completely different lives, and neither one feels like home. With Laura, everything became performative. A conversation here, a forced dinner there. We were just cohabiting now. Two ghosts occupying the same shell. We didn't argue anymore. In some ways, that was worse. Silence wasn't peace. It was apathy. She'd leave in tight dresses and return at hours when most of the world was asleep. I stopped asking where she'd been. She stopped pretending to care whether I did. The irony? I think she still thought she had the upper hand. Like I was sitting here, pining, waiting for her to realize she missed me. That I was just biding time until she tired of the men and the flings and the excitement. But she hadn't noticed how much I'd changed. Because she wasn't really looking. I'd started dressing sharper. Not to impress anyone, not even Emily. But because I wanted to recognize myself again when I looked in the mirror. The man staring back at me had been asleep for too long. I trimmed my beard. Hit the gym before work. Hell, I even reactivated my Spotify and made a playlist. It was small stuff, but it meant something. Emily noticed. She noticed everything. "You look good," she said the next time we met at the cafe. Relaxed. Lighter. I took her hand across the table. "That's because of you." We were careful. Not hiding, exactly, but not parading it either. Our meetings were private. Honest. She never pressured me. Never asked when I was leaving Laura. She didn't need to. She knew it was coming. We both did. She kissed me in parking lots now. Sometimes in the middle of conversations, like she couldn't hold it back. Once, in the aisle of a bookstore, she leaned in and whispered, "You taste like 2007, before brushing her lips against mine. I hadn't laughed that hard in months. It was different with her, not just the chemistry, but the attention. She saw me, heard me, asked things like, "What's your happiest memory from childhood?" Or, "If you could relive one day, what would it be?" Questions Laura hadn't asked in years. Meanwhile, Laura had no idea who I was anymore. I came home late one night after a run and found her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone with a glass of wine. "Where have you been?" she asked, without looking up. "Out," I said, peeling off my jacket. She glanced at me then, a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. You've been dressing nice lately. You've been gone every other night, I replied coolly. She rolled her eyes, annoyed I wasn't feeding the narrative she'd built. Don't turn this on me. But I wasn't turning anything. I was just done lying. You wanted freedom, I said. You got it. Just didn't realize I might do something with mine, too. Her eyes narrowed. So what? You're seeing someone now? I met her gaze. Would it matter if I was? Laura didn't answer. She just stood, muttered something under her breath, and disappeared into the bedroom. She didn't bring it up again. But things started shifting after that. She lingered in the mornings. Started asking what I was doing after work. Not out of love, out of curiosity, maybe even insecurity. She saw something she didn't expect. I was pulling away, not out of bitterness, not for revenge, because I had found someone who filled the spaces she didn't even know were empty. Emily and I spend entire evenings talking now. Not just flirting. Real stuff. Family. Fears. I told her about my dad. How losing him left a quiet hole I never acknowledged. She shared stories about college nights on rooftops and the first time she got her heart broken by a guy who made promises he had no intention of keeping. I've only ever felt safe with you, she said one night, curled beside me on her couch. Even when we were kids. I kissed the top of her head. You make me feel real again. We hadn't slept together. Not yet. We hadn't needed to rush it. But there was something far more intimate in the way we curled up at night, limbs tangled, her breath warm against my collarbone, than anything I'd experienced in years. With Laura, sex had become mechanical. Expected, then optional, then extinct. With Emily, everything was alive. That weekend, Laura tried to test the waters. She invited me to a friend's dinner party, the first social thing we'd done together in months. You should come, she said. Might be good for us. Us? I asked. She nodded, overly casual. People are starting to talk. Oh, there it was. She didn't care about rebuilding our relationship. She cared about appearances. Her circle. The narrative. I went, out of curiosity. It was stiff, performative, and boring. Everyone smiled too hard and laughed too loud. Laura clung to my arm like a trophy she hadn't dusted off in months. She introduced me with pride, but barely touched me in private. After the third glass of wine, she leaned in and whispered, "See? We still clean up nice." I looked her in the eyes and said, "Yeah, but polishing silver doesn't make it whole." She blinked, her smile faltering. I left early. That night, I didn't go home. I went to Emily's. She opened the door in an oversized sweatshirt, her hair messy, no makeup. She saw my face and didn't ask what happened. Just opened her arms and held me. I buried my face in her neck. "I don't want to go back," I whispered. "Then don't," she said. And I didn't. It was just a photo. A moment, really. Nothing posed. Nothing obvious. Emily had snapped it while we were sitting by the window at that quiet cafe downtown, our mugs side by side, steam curling toward the glass. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the city in soft oranges and golds. We weren't even looking at the camera. I was smiling at something she'd just said, and her hand was resting on mine, casual and warm. She didn't post it with some grand caption. No declarations, no hashtags, no names. Just a single heart emoji. But that was enough. Laura saw it the next morning. I was brushing my teeth when I heard the bedroom door slam. Loud. Hard. Like a warning shot. I stepped out of the bathroom still holding my toothbrush, heart already racing. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, her face twisted in something between shock and fury. "What the fuck is this?" she asked, holding up the screen. The photo. Emily and me. Her hand on mine. My smile, not fake, not forced. Real. "What does it look like?" I said calmly, toothbrush still foaming in my mouth. Laura stood up, eyes wide. "Are you fucking kidding me right now?" I turned and rinsed my mouth at the sink. "You wanted an open marriage. That's not the same, and you know it." I looked at her through the mirror. "Why? Because you didn't think I'd find someone?" Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time in months, I saw something crack in her. Not just anger, panic. "I was honest with you," she said, voice shaking. "I told you when I went out. I didn't hide anything." "No," I said. "You just stopped coming home." Her shoulders stiffened. "You told me we needed excitement," I continued. "That we were growing apart. That you wanted to explore. So I gave you space. I didn't fight you. I sat with the loneliness. I swallowed every fucking night you didn't text back. And now, Because I found something real. You're hurt? She flinched at that. Real? She echoed. You think this is real? You've known her what, a few weeks? I stepped forward, voice low. I've known her for years. She knew me before you ever did. And you know what? She still sees me. Laura scoffed. So what now? You going to run off and play house with your little high school fantasy? Maybe, I said. At least she wants to be there. Laura's mouth dropped, stunned silent. I sat on the edge of the bed across from her. The air between us buzzed like a live wire. I wasn't trying to hurt you, I said honestly. But you didn't think this through. You opened the door, Laura. You wanted freedom. You just didn't want me to use it. She looked down at the floor, voice barely a whisper. You were supposed to be the safe one. I was. Silence stretched between us. I watched as her walls started to tremble, not fall. Not yet, but tremble. I didn't think you'd find someone better, she admitted bitter. She's not better, I said. She's just right for me. And that was the truth. Laura had spent weeks chasing new faces, new thrills, thinking she could dip in and out of freedom while I stayed loyal in the background. The husband she could come home to when the novelty wore off. But I wasn't background anymore. Later that day, I got a message from one of Laura's friends, Rachel. The same Rachel who once toasted our wedding with too much wine and cried about true love. Rachel saw the pic. Didn't expect you to be the one who moved on first. It hit me then how visible this all was now. We weren't in the shadows anymore. Laura's friends would talk. So would mine. That circle of people who never really understood our marriage, now speculating about its unraveling like it was an episode of a show they only half-watched. And still, I felt no shame. That night, Laura sat across from me at dinner. A meal she didn't cook, a table we barely used anymore. She didn't speak, just picked at her salad, her eyes red-rimmed, her mascara faintly smudged like she hadn't fully cleaned herself up before sitting down. I finally broke the silence. You okay? She looked up sharply. Don't ask me that. I sighed. You don't get to be angry that I followed the rules you set. You knew what I meant when I said open marriage, she snapped. No, I said quietly. You assumed I'd always be here, waiting. Her mouth clamped shut. She didn't sleep in our bed that night. Took a blanket to the couch. I heard her crying, muffled and stubborn. I didn't go to her. I didn't whisper comfort or offer to talk. I lay in bed alone. Again, but this time, I felt peace. Not because I hurt her, but because I finally stopped letting her hurt me. The next morning, I made coffee. Sat on the porch in the cold. Texted Emily a simple. She knows. She responded instantly. Are you okay? More than okay, I wrote. I think I'm free. Laura didn't say a word for 3 days. Not when I poured her coffee in the morning. Not when we passed each other in the hallway. Not when I came home late and caught her sitting in the dark, glass of wine in hand, staring blankly at the TV while some cooking show played in the background. Silence had once been my prison. Now, it felt like her punishment. She wasn't angry anymore. She was quiet, stunned, hollow, like the foundation she'd stood on had finally cracked beneath her heels and no one had warned her it was coming. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Her own reflection was doing all the work. Her lovers, the parade of names I never asked about, began vanishing. I noticed the change subtly at first. Fewer late-night returns, no more giddy texts or the clink of makeup compacts in the morning. Then came the bigger signs. One by one, her adventures fizzled out. Maybe they saw the photo. Maybe she tried to compare them to someone who finally meant something to me. Or maybe they just lost interest once they realized she wasn't unattached emotionally, just morally. She still tried to act indifferent for a while. She'd play music loud while getting ready, text furiously on the couch, toss on perfume she hadn't worn since our early days like I wouldn't recognize it. But her eyes betrayed her. The sparkle was gone, replaced with something far less certain, fear. She knew I was slipping away, and worse, that I wasn't reaching for her anymore. The whispers started next. It began at a mutual friend's housewarming. I hadn't planned on going, but curiosity got the better of me. When I walked in, alone, the room shifted. Not dramatically, just a few glances that lingered too long. 1 or 2 hushed comments. A raised brow. A sympathetic nod from Rachel, who gave me a smile that said everything without saying a word. That night, a guy I barely knew, some coworker of Laura's, cornered me near the kitchen. Hey, man, he said, lowering his voice. Sorry about all that. You know, the open thing. Heard it got messy. I laughed. Not bitterly, genuinely. It didn't get messy. She just thought I wouldn't participate. He blinked, thrown off. Damn. Good for you. Laura arrived an hour later. Alone. When she saw me, her eyes froze. She hadn't expected me there. Hadn't expected me to look relaxed, confident, happy. And she definitely hadn't expected me to be talking to another woman. Emily wasn't there. Not yet. But I didn't need her presence to rattle Laura. All it took was me existing fully, no longer orbiting her. She approached eventually. Didn't know you were coming, she said, trying for casual. Last minute, I said, sipping my drink. Needed to get out. She looked down, then around the room. People were watching, even if they pretended not to be. You embarrassed me, she said quietly, stepping closer. That photo, you let it go public. You embarrassed yourself, I replied, matching her tone. You opened the door, Laura. I just stepped through it. You don't have to keep punishing me, she snapped. I'm not, I said calmly. This isn't punishment. This is freedom. Her eyes watered, just slightly, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the urge to comfort her. I felt sad for her, yes, but not out of love. Out of pity. The next morning, she made breakfast. Pancakes, the kind she hadn't bothered with in years. She set a plate in front of me without a word and sat across the table. I stared at the syrup pooling beside the stack, steam curling into the cold silence. I want to fix this, she said finally. I looked up. Why now? She swallowed. Because I was wrong. I thought we needed newness, adventure, but all it did was make me feel more alone. I didn't respond. I miss you, she whispered. I miss us. I pushed my plate aside. There is no us anymore, I said. There's you. There's me. And there's a whole lot of hurt between the two. Tears filled her eyes. I know I messed up. No, I cut in. We both did. But the difference is, I tried. I stayed. You left. Over and over again. I thought I'd be enough eventually, she said, voice cracking. That the thrill would be enough. But it wasn't. It felt empty. And you only saw that once I stopped waiting for you to come back. Her silence confirmed it. That afternoon, I took a walk. The air was crisp, the leaves shifting into amber and crimson. I called Emily. Hey, she answered, voice warm. I'm ready, I said. For what? For all of it. For you. Silence stretched, the good kind. You sure? She asked. Yes, I said, stopping under a red oak. She realized too late what she threw away. What did she say? That she misses me. Emily chuckled gently. She misses the version of you that waited. I don't even know that version anymore, I said. We stayed on the phone a long time after that. Talking, planning, dreaming. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving my life. I was choosing it. When I came home, Laura was gone. Her perfume still hung in the air. Her plate still sat in the sink. I didn't mind. She was fading. And so was everything we used to be. The envelope sat on the dining table for nearly an hour before I finally slid it across to her. Laura stared at it. She didn't touch it. Her hands were still wrapped around a mug of coffee she hadn't sipped. She looked smaller than usual that morning. No makeup, hair in a loose bun. Her usual armor, the practiced poise, the sharp sarcasm, the aloof disinterest, was gone. She knew. She'd known for weeks, but now it was real. Divorce papers. I've already signed, I said. All it needs is yours. Her eyes lifted, slow. That's it. I nodded. That's it. Laura didn't move. The silence between us wasn't tense anymore. It was tired. A quiet, mutual understanding that the end had come and there was no salvaging what we'd once had. You're not even going to ask if I'll fight it? She whispered. No, I said. Because I don't think you will. She blinked. You think I'm that easy to let go? No, I said softly. I think we're that far gone. She finally reached for the envelope. Her fingers trembled as she pulled it toward her, flipping it open to scan the first page. I never thought it would end like this, she said after a minute. A kitchen table and legal documents. How else was it supposed to end? I asked. You opened the door. I walked through it. Now here we are. Laura swallowed hard. Her throat worked like she was holding something back. I thought you'd come back around, she said. Like always. I did. Over and over again, I replied. And you weren't there. Every time I reached out, you were already gone. She looked down again, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. I made a mistake. I know. I thought an open marriage would bring us closer. No, I said. You wanted an escape. You just didn't want to lose the safety net. Tears welled up, but she blinked them away. Why didn't you fight harder? Because love isn't a hostage situation, I said. I can't drag you back to me and call that love. And after a while, I realized I didn't want to. She stared at the paper again, her thumb tracing a line across the page. And now there's her. Emily, I said, not flinching. Her jaw clenched. Was she the plan all along? No, I said. But she reminded me of who I used to be. Before the silence. Before we became this. Laura gave a quiet laugh. Bitter. Funny. I spent so long trying to feel wanted by strangers. I didn't even notice when the man who loved me stopped waiting. She didn't say it like a jab. More like a confession. I'm sorry, she added. I know, I said. She didn't cry. Not in the way I'd imagined. No breakdown. No pleading. Just quiet acceptance. The damage was too old. The wounds too layered to bleed anymore. She signed the papers with a pen from the junk drawer. Her signature was swift, steady, final. I hope she makes you happy, Laura said, handing the pages back. She already does. She nodded, stood, and left the room. I heard the door to the guest room close softly behind her. I sat there for a while, the signed papers in my lap, coffee long since cold. I didn't feel triumph, or relief, or even sadness. Just closure. That night, I called Emily. She signed, I said. On the other end, there was a pause. Then, how do you feel? Like a chapter closed, I said. And the next one's waiting. She didn't say anything, just breathed into the receiver, a soft exhale that sounded like hope. I want to do this right, I said. With you. No secrets. No half-truths. Just us. I've never wanted anything more, she whispered. That weekend, I packed my things. I didn't make a show of it. No grand exits. Just a couple of bags, some clothes, my guitar. I left the house keys on the counter. Laura wasn't there when I left. She'd gone to a friend's. I sent her a message. Thank you for signing. I wish you peace. Truly. She replied hours later. Take care of yourself. And her. Emily met me at the new apartment. Small, quiet, filled with light and potential. She opened the door, arms wide. No questions, no doubts. Home. We didn't talk much that first night. We cooked pasta, opened a bottle of red wine, played music low on the speakers. She danced with me barefoot in the kitchen, just like she used to when we were kids. Her laughter was everything I thought I'd lost in life. Soft, messy, real. Later, lying beside her, my head resting against her chest, I said, I thought letting go of Laura would hurt more. It still might, Emily said, brushing my hair back. But this doesn't, I said. This feels like breathing again. She smiled. That's because it's not the end, Jake. It's the beginning. It was the first time I'd worn a suit since my wedding. Not the same suit, of course. That one was boxed somewhere in a storage unit, still smelling faintly of cologne and broken promises. This one was new. Slim-fit navy, crisp collar, charcoal tie. Emily had helped me pick it out. Said it made my eyes look deeper. Said I looked like someone who knew exactly who he was. She wore a dark emerald dress, open at the back, her hair twisted up with a few loose strands kissing her neck. She didn't need anything flashy. She never did. She had that effortless kind of beauty, the kind that didn't demand attention but still stole it anyway. We parked a block away from the venue, a repurposed hall downtown. Class of 2010's 15-year high school reunion. Ready? She asked, sliding her hand into mine. I smiled. I've been ready for months. Inside, the place buzzed with the kind of energy that comes from nostalgia and nervous laughter. People milled about holding plastic cups of wine, pointing at old photos, hugging strangers they hadn't seen in a decade. The music was a little too loud, the lighting just dim enough to hide the weight of the years behind polite smiles. We stepped in together. Eyes turned. At first, it was subtle, a glance, a double take. But within moments, I saw the whispers start. Small groups breaking off, elbows nudging ribs, people turning to each other with wide eyes and half smirks. They hadn't expected me to show up. They definitely hadn't expected me to show up with Emily. I heard someone near the refreshment table whisper, "Is that?" Followed by, "No way. That's Jake." "And is that Emily?" We moved through the crowd slowly, intentionally, greeting people I barely remembered. Emily smiled graciously, laughed at old stories I'd nearly forgotten, held my hand without hesitation. We weren't performing. We didn't need to. We were just together. And then I saw her. Laura. She stood near the photo booth, wearing a red dress I recognized from our 5th anniversary. Her hair was pinned in place, her smile too wide, too practiced. She was talking to a group of friends, laughing, until her eyes landed on me. She froze. I didn't stop walking, didn't falter. Emily's hand stayed in mine, warm and steady. We passed her group and I nodded once, just enough to acknowledge her, no more. Her lips parted like she wanted to speak, but she didn't. We kept moving. That was the moment. Not revenge, not rage, just freedom. No grand confrontation, no dramatic lines, just a single look that said everything. You lost something real. I didn't. Later, when we sat at one of the long tables eating cake and sipping on punch, an old classmate named Darren leaned across and grinned. Man, he said, you made a statement tonight. I raised a brow. By showing up? He laughed. Nah, by looking like the happiest guy in the room. That's what gets people talking. Emily leaned into me, her hand on my thigh beneath the table. Let them talk, she said. An hour before the night wrapped up, Laura approached. Alone. Emily excused herself to the restroom, and for a moment, it was just the two of us again. Ghosts in formal wear. You look good, Laura said, arms crossed lightly over her chest. You too, I replied. It wasn't a lie. She looked polished, but not happy. She hesitated. Didn't expect to see you here. Why not? Her eyes flicked toward where Emily had disappeared. You seem moved on. I am, I said simply. She nodded slowly, chewing the inside of her cheek like she was holding back 1,000 things. Regret, bitterness, curiosity. She always had a thing for you, you know, she said. I shrugged. Guess I had a thing for her too. Just took me longer to realize it. She didn't smile, didn't joke. This wasn't a playful exchange. I thought seeing you again would hurt, she said, voice quieter now. But honestly, it just makes me feel stupid. I said nothing. I traded stability for thrills, she continued. Thought I was rewriting the rules. But all I did was push away the only man who ever really showed up for me. I finally looked her in the eyes. You didn't push me away, Laura. You walked away. I just eventually stopped following. That was it. No cruelty. Just truth. She nodded, blinking fast. She's lucky, she said. No, I replied. I'm lucky. Laura turned without another word. I watched her go, and I didn't feel a thing. When Emily came back, I stood and pulled her close, her arms wrapping around my neck as we swayed to some slow 2000s ballad playing on the speakers. Her head rested against my chest. I could feel her smiling. Everything okay? She asked softly. Perfect, I said. And it was. No drama. No speeches. No grand finale. Just the man she believed in and the woman I'd almost forgotten I deserved, dancing in the middle of a room full of people who finally saw the truth. That happiness was never about winning. It was about becoming. And I had.